Hey everyone, it's Steve. Welcome back to another episode of the HSP Experience. It's July 20th, 2020. And today I have Jenna on the podcast, who is an HSP and an INFP. I really enjoyed talking to her. She's super cool. I am really impressed with how self-aware she is and how psychologically savvy she is at 23. I have a feeling a lot of people my age, like I'm 50, a lot of Generation Xers and people who discovered high sensitivity and this trait and everything that goes with it in middle age. Like, I'm so jealous. I'm like, oh, I wish I knew what she knew when she was 23. I'm super impressed. I think she's a really good example and super relatable for younger HSP and INFP women. But anybody with high sensitivity or INFP type is going to relate to her story. So yeah, that's coming up in just a second. But I just want to remind everyone that you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the HSP EXP if you want to subscribe. And I also want to encourage people to go out to the forums. Go to the hspexperience.com, click on forum. It's really taken off. We have a lot of good conversations happening, a lot of cool people, good discussions. One of my favorites right now is on synchronicities. Yeah, I'm digging that topic. It's a really good place to get your questions answered. It's pretty active. People are helping each other, answering questions. Because a lot of people, they discover HSP and they're like, well, what do I do? Who do I talk to? So that's a good place to go meet other people that are sharing this experience. Also, I have 2 more interviews that I'm going to do next week. I'll get those up as soon as I can. If you want to be on the podcast, if you want to share your HSP experience, or if you're an expert in something, like if you're an expert in, codependency or surviving narcissistic abuse or empowering HSPs, that kind of thing, get a hold of me. Just go to the hspexperience.com, click on contact, and we'll get you on the podcast. So yeah, I think you're going to like this interview with Jenna. She's got great energy, super cool vibe. And yeah, so let's get to it. Yeah, thanks for coming on and being willing to hang out and talk about your HSP experience. It's pretty cool. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So how did you find out about my podcast? Like what?
So I found out about the concept of an HSP from it's called the Psychology Podcast with Scott Barry Kaufman, I think. And he had the kind of creator of the concept.
Did you read the highly sensitive person? Did you read the book?
I just got it in. So I'm going to read it soon. I just got my copy in the mail the other day.
Oh, right on. Yeah. Be prepared to have a lot of aha moments. Yeah. When I first read that book, it was like a huge puzzle piece for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not a total misfit in this world. Yeah.
For sure. That's kind of how I felt when I learned what an INFP was from like the Myers-Briggs stuff, and just like reading that whole profile, I was like, wow, that makes me feel so much better about myself.
Oh yeah, that was another thing for me too. So it sounds like you learned that you're INFP first, and then you discovered you were HSP.
Yeah,
right?
that's how I found your podcast, because I've always been like into podcasts, and when I found out what that was, I just kind of typed that into the Apple search, and your podcast was one of the first ones that came up. So
yeah, I discovered I was HSP first, and then I forget how I got into Myers-Briggs. But the thing I liked about the MBTI stuff is like, that's obviously the personality part, because the HSP sensory processing sensitivity piece is just like the genetic nervous system, our neurobiology, which is super cool. But it's interesting to see which way HSPs go, because a lot of us are INFPs and INFJs, and
it is really interesting, because I had not as much lately, but a couple of years ago, I started like just being really sensitive to like different things in the environment. And it was just, and my dad's kind of the same way. So I knew there was like a genetic part of it. So when I found out that there was like a connection between like the emotional sensitivity and the environmental sensitivity, I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
So what are some of the things you're sensitive to? I'm curious. I'll tell you some of my stuff in a second.
A big one has been medication. Like whenever I have to take any kind of medication, like any side effect that goes with that medicine, I'll get all of them super intense. So like trying to think of an example, like for example, I had like a wisdom tooth infection. I had to take an antibiotic, and by the end of the course, I was like had like a rash, like was getting really dizzy, like all this weird stuff. So medication is one. Loud noises is another one. I have a German Shepherd, and every time someone comes to the house, he like goes crazy, and I'm just like, wow, that's a lot. So sound, and then like smells and different products. I never had asthma as a kid. And then one day I was at like a track meet and I was putting on spray sunscreen, and I just noticed like, wow, I can't breathe. So I like went to an allergist, and they're like, yeah, you have allergen sensitive asthma, which is not that common. So just little weird stuff like that. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, sounds are huge. Well, I have something called misophonia, and that's pretty common for highly sensitive people. And what that is, it's actually a hatred of certain sounds. Like
Really?
leaf blowers will do it for me, or sirens. Certain sounds will actually, it'll actually make me kind of angry just because I
Yeah.
want the sound to stop. Yeah. But also like chewing, people smacking gum, that bothers me.
Yeah.
Yeah, look up misophonia. You might have it. It's super, and there's all these wacky ones. People have these crazy aversions to certain sounds.
That's interesting. I don't know. It's always cool to hear other people that have similar problems like
Yeah,
that.
because we're just so sensitive. We pick up on everything. Like a rattle, like if my car, like if it's rattling, I'll pull over and try to figure out what's rattling, like a random sound, or a fan that's, kind of random rattling. That'll
Yeah.
drive me nuts. And other people won't
I
even
mean,
notice it.
it's probably good. It probably keeps you pretty safe.
Well, that's the cool thing about this HSP trait is evolution selected for it because it's a survival advantage, right? Like we're so aware of our environment, we notice everything.
Right, exactly. I read this book that kind of touches on some of these issues, and the author refers to really sensitive people as like canaries in a coal mine. Like when something's off, we're the ones that are like, should probably figure out what's going on there.
I know, right? So cool. Oh, real quick, I wanted to ask you when in your email you said you're in graduate school. I was just curious what you're going for.
Yeah, I'm getting my master's in teaching. So I'm
Teaching.
gonna be like a high school teacher.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a very INFP thing, HSP thing. We're always the teachers, the therapists, the philosophers,
right.
Also musicians. I see you have a keyboard back there. Yeah, that's definitely our vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love to teach.
That's great.
Yeah, it's sort of what I do on here. I do a bunch of research, then I talk about a topic. Yeah, we love to teach people. That's great. I think HSPs make the best teachers because they actually care. They're super intuitive about which kid needs the most help, and they're very compassionate.
For sure. Yeah, that's a good quality to have, to be, because you have to pick up on, like you said, every student's unique needs. And if someone doesn't have the patience or the willingness to notice those things, then it's unfortunate for the students.
Yeah. How do you like school? How'd you do in school? The only reason I ask is, as an INFP, sometimes I found it pretty hard to, unless I was really into a topic, it was hard for me to really get into it. I have my degree, but I only did it because I had to, but I wasn't really, I felt like I had to just jump through a bunch of hoops. I don't know. Did you enjoy all of it, or did you feel like some of it was a little, I don't know.
That's a good question. So I was definitely like an overachieving type student. Like I was the one that someone was like, "Hey Jenna, do you want to like do something this weekend?" I was like, "No, I got to do my homework." Like I was that type of student. So I don't know if it was more like anxiety driven, like perfection type stuff. I don't necessarily think it's that I was into it. I did like to get good grades, but I will say I wasn't big on like reading textbooks about stuff I wasn't interested in. I tended to skip over that part, or I was definitely a big procrastinator. So,
Oh yeah, that's a lot of INFPs are procrastinators. I'm a procrastinator. Do you find yourself to be kind of daydreamy too? Like, are you a daydreamer?
yes,
Okay,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Definitely a daydreamer, especially like if I got something going on, something that I'm dealing with, I'll just retreat into my own little fantasy world. And sometimes it's hard to come out and like, all right, you're going to have to get back in the present moment or you're going to miss out on some stuff. But definitely love to daydream. Like, I love to take walks and just think about stuff, different scenarios. Driving, I tend to kind of go off into different places.
I'm the
Yeah,
same way.
for sure.
I'm curious. Do you have any hobbies that where you can express your creativity as an INFP or an HSP?
Yeah, so in college I was really into like writing poetry. I was involved in like the school's literary magazine. Um I love to journal. Those are my main like creative outlets, I guess. Reading, it's not really me being creative, but just looking at other people's creativity, I guess.
Yeah, I used to write
But
poetry too.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
it
I was
seems
just
like a
thinking
lot
about
of
that.
yeah, it seems like a lot of INFPs, like I think it's somewhere even in the profile that we're like naturally born writers. I just find it I'm so much better at writing than speaking. Like organizing what I'm thinking about before trying to say it really
Yeah.
helps me communicate, I guess.
Well, you journal. You know, I always talk about this podcast that I do. It's basically like me journaling, but I just put it into a podcast because it's me getting all this stuff out of my head. And I think there's something about us INFP types, probably all NF types, is we got to get this stuff out of our head. Don't you feel better when you journal? Like you get it out, you're like,
Yes.
oh, and you see it on
Yes.
paper. It feels so
Yes.
good. Like when I do a podcast, my head feels clear for like a few days until it gets recluttered
Yes.
up with a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. It feels so good to just purge all those thoughts running around in your head. And I don't know about you, I love to go back and read the stuff I wrote because I don't know, like it just feels cool to like interact with yourself. I
So
don't know.
true. Like, can you relate to this too? Like, do you ever write something down and maybe you're like in a dark period and it's kind of maybe depressing or whatever. And then
Mhm.
you go back and read it maybe like a year later, but you're in a good place now, but you can still feel, you still have empathy for that person that you were a year ago that wrote that down. You can almost be like, oh, I felt sorry for that
Yes.
Steve or that Jenna. Like I
Yeah.
remember I was in that place. Like you can still, we're so empathetic. We can like literally feel how we felt when we wrote it a year earlier,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting. Like
It is. And I don't know why, but I like even if it's like a really bad time with a lot of negative emotions, I like to have a record of that because even if it's a negative emotion, I like capturing those strong feelings and trying to preserve them to go back to later. Like, I don't know.
yeah, I should
Yeah.
probably journal more. I wish I had a record. I wish I had a better record of my journey kind of thing.
Same.
Yeah.
I tend to like do it a lot when I'm really going through it. And then when I'm good, I don't necessarily feel compelled to write, but I wish that I saved those good times too, instead of just all of the ones where I'm going through whatever.
I have a question for you about in your email, you talked about if you had this breakup, it sounds like you're in a long-term relationship, you had a breakup.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious, how do you think being a highly sensitive person in INFP affected you, affected how you are handling and dealt with that situation? Do you think it made a difference?
Yes. I think that relation, a lot of people say that they have one big heartbreak that taught them like so much, and they kind of went into it naive and not really knowing the possible outcome that might be negative for them. And that's kind of how I was, because so I spent from age 13 to 21 in a long-term relationship with, and that one was fine, like nothing really toxic there. It was healthy and secure and whatever. It just kind of naturally came to an end. And then I pretty quickly met this person, and obviously like right away there were some red flags that this was not going to be like a healthy long-term relationship. And I saw that right away, but I was still like, yeah, whatever. It's just an experience. It's just someone to hang out with or whatever. So I kept going back. And then like I kind of developed feelings that I hadn't necessarily felt before. And they kind of just came on all of a sudden. And so I guess now here I am with these strong feelings for this person, even though I knew it's probably not going to end well for me. Like back in November when things were decent, I guess, I wrote like this letter to that person. Like I was just at work one day and I remember I was just so overcome, like, wow, I can't believe how much I love this person. Like I feel so strongly for them. But I remember writing like, I feel like you don't feel the same way about me. Like I don't think that you feel the same love that I feel. But like I was like, I don't know, it feels so good to love someone. I'm just gonna keep at it, I guess. And I was like, I feel like it's not gonna end well for me, but it's okay. Like it's no hard feelings or something like that. I wasn't intended to give it to them. I was kind of I just wanted to get my feelings on paper, I guess. So then when everything happened, like the relationship ended, and I looked back at that, I was like, wow, like I saw this whole thing coming, and I still, I don't know. I wrote some notes about this relationship because it's just a really complex situation.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I have a couple questions for you. So you said there were some red flags initially. I'm curious, like what were they? And then why did you go past them?
Mm-hmm. So,
and I'm only asking you because I think it could help other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm sure like this happens to a lot of, especially on like we're idealist, right? We'll idealize people. We'll like kind of minimize red flags. So yeah, if you could share like what your thoughts were around that.
Yeah, I love talking about like relationships and analyzing them. So
yeah, me too. That's INFP. That's like that's what we do. That's our jam. Yeah,
exactly. I guess as far as red flags, like it was just obvious from the beginning that like I had stronger feelings than them. Like they were kind of like not flaky, but they just weren't like, if we had plans, I was going to be there right on time. Like they could count on me no matter what. They were just a little more wishy-washy, like just moody, I guess. Like sometimes they were so sweet and kind and we had such a good time, and then other times it was like they would kind of shut off and withdraw a little bit. And I hadn't experienced that before. Like I said, I was with a relatively stable and secure person before that. So, and I don't know, that was kind of like addicting, the swing between like them giving me attention and then when they would withdraw, like I would get.
You know what you're describing right here is intermittent reinforcement, which is something narcissists do. Mm-hmm. That's why I asked you, have you attracted narcissists before? Because I've never met an INFP woman yet that hasn't, because it's just the way the dynamic is. So it sounds like you might have met your first narcissist. Yeah. But keep going. That addictive, you said addictive. That's a very interesting word, because there is an addiction between usually the narcissist and the sensitive person. It's interesting.
It is. It's interesting that you are like, you mentioned narcissists and that you like asked me if that happened to me, because at one point I did think that's what was going on, and I was like, oh crap, this isn't gonna end well at all. But I do think that person is like, I don't think that they are devoid of empathy and they weren't like trying to destroy me. Like I do think they genuinely cared about me, and like they weren't intentionally messing with me. They had their own kind of issues that I didn't realize were going on under the surface, and I think that that's more of what was going on. And another, like, have you ever heard about or read about in relationships like theories of attachment, like anxious, avoidant, secure stuff? So I think he was just, I wouldn't say like a narcissist and I was devoid of empathy, but just avoidant. Like he didn't want his, I guess, independence infringed on. So I think it was just, I would say it was a toxic situation for me, but I don't think it was to the extent of like a narcissistic abuse type thing. if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a spectrum. There's like
Mm-hmm.
highly narcissistic people, and then there's like pathological narcissism, which that's
Mm-hmm.
like the real dangerous ones. Yeah. That's interesting. Would you keep going back to him? Like, who would break up with who?
Well, we only broke up the one time and that was it.
Oh, because I thought
Was
you said you kept going back at one point.
it was just kind of like they would like distance themselves and I would,
Okay.
a more healthy, well-adjusted person would be like, okay, like they want their space or they're not that interested, I'm gonna back off. But I was like I need to fix this, I need to figure out what I did wrong, and I need to,
Man.
yeah.
Wow. Interesting. See, this
Yeah.
is sounding like your typical codependent narcissist relationship. I'm not judging it. I'm not trying to label. I'm just trying to, the pattern is interesting because like I'm in a relationship right now. I never disappear ever. And neither
Mm-hmm.
does she. Now I'm just trying to figure it out. It's interesting. I'm always on the lookout I'm
Mm-hmm.
always trying to look on, especially for HSP women, because I have just seen so many lives destroyed, especially INFPs. For some reason, they always end up with, do you know what his MBTI type was?
ENTJ, the commander.
An EN, an EN. It's almost always ESs,
Really?
sensors. Yeah. Oh,
Well,
but he's an E. But okay, interesting.
he
Yeah.
had, like I said, he told me like at the end of it, it wasn't like he was just like, okay, bye. Like he like sat me down and was like, look, I haven't been honest with you. I've had this going on and I'm really sorry. Like, I just can't be in this relationship. And I was like, I'm sorry for being vague. I just like, I'm keeping like a secret for this person and I don't want to like blast it onto the
Yeah.
internet. But
Well,
I
you'll
think
know
if
if he's a real
like,
narcissist is if he tries to hoover you back. That's
mm-hmm.
like in a couple months, he's like, hey, how's it going? What you up to? That's a Hoover, right? So just be on the lookout. Yeah. He
That's
sounds
good to
like, yeah. Oh man, I've seen it a million times. Yeah.
know.
And the fact that you were trying to do all the work to fix it, that's,
It was
um,
definitely me being codependent and not recognizing this is not good for me. They have stuff going on, obviously, and this is not going to be healthy. But like at the beginning, I guess I was just kind of like, whatever. Like I just got out of a super long-term relationship. I wasn't in a hurry to put a label on it. It was just kind of, I graduated college. I had free time and I was looking for people to hang out with, and here this was. And then
yeah.
one day I was like, oh, I have all these feelings for this person now. So
Well, good on you. You did good. Sounds like you have really good boundaries. Like I feel like you're pretty savvy, actually. You're gonna be okay, as far
I
as
definitely learned a lot from this, and something that really I have to watch out for in the future, and that really got me during this one, is how, like, in a relationship, my emotional state is so dependent on what they're doing. Like, even when I was in a relationship with this healthy, secure person, like, my emotions can be so easily altered by anything that they do, and that is not good. And my sister told me, like, she summed it up perfectly. She's like, I haven't been in a relationship for a long time because I don't want my mood to be determined by someone else. And that's kind of what was happening. Like, it was, things would be good and I'd have all these good hormones and it felt so good. And then it would go away. And I was like, okay, I have to get that back. I have to do whatever it takes. I have to figure out whatever I did to whatever. So,
interesting. Have you read about codependency? Like, do you understand it? Okay. Yeah. And it's not a bad thing. Like codependency is just
yeah.
not that I'm not even saying you are. I used to be super codependent. So that's why I talk about it. Cause it's almost like we attract a certain type of person that is toxic for us, basically. So we just have to be super careful. We always
Definitely
blame ourselves.
codependent.
Like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah,
And
exactly. And it
yeah,
seems like a lot of times it's like us, like what I've read a lot since then, like why do we get into these situations? It seems like a lot of times we recreate something from how we attach to our parents, and we try to kind of recreate the same dynamics that we had as a kid. Somebody who had a parent who was sometimes present and sometimes withdrawn, seek that out in a partner. And I think it's really been interesting to be aware of that and just to think back, like, how might the way I interacted with my mom and dad as a kid be reflected in this?
that's so good that you know that. You're 23, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so good. See, we didn't know that kind of stuff. I grew up, I'm Generation X. Like, we didn't know anything. Oh my gosh.
I get
Like,
you.
I wish
I
they would
get
have
you.
a class in like high school or even
Mm-hmm.
college, like a freshman class that's like how to spot toxic relationships, you know, because nobody
Mm-hmm.
teaches us anything. And then, you know, we burn all these years of our lives with these people.
If more people would feel, especially I think in the older generations, will feel comfortable like going to therapy and reaching out for help when they don't feel good. Like I would love for my parents to go to therapy. I think it would be so good for them. But it seems like that generation is just so like, ugh, therapy. Like,
Yeah, I'm the same way. Both my parents were never, they would never go. They saw it as like weakness. I know my dad for sure did.
exactly.
He's
Exactly.
old school. He just died a few months ago, but he would never go. For him to go talk about his feelings, it would be
Yes.
emasculating for him. You know, men don't do
Exactly.
that, right? In that generation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now I love talking about it. I just can't afford it. I would love to sit with a therapist for like a year, work a bunch of stuff out.
It's so expensive for sure. I was lucky that at my college offered like free counseling, and going there was such a good step for me. And I do miss having that, because for a long time I was like, I cannot talk about these things with anyone. They will think I'm insane.
That's really cool. I can tell you. Yeah. So you've gone to therapy about some of these things. I could tell because you have it very straight in your mind, which is pretty cool. What made you go to therapy to begin with? Like what made you go like, I got to go talk to somebody?
So I went for social anxiety.
Oh, okay.
I also, so I had like some health problems in my teens. That's kind of what started all of this journey for me. Was I had like these health problems, and it took forever to get them diagnosed. So I was just like having these crazy symptoms every day. It really limited my life. Like I wasn't able to go to like the college I wanted to go to. I kind of like shut myself off from any socializing. So then when I finally got that figured out and I wanted to come back out into the world, I guess, I was like, I'm not equipped. Yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Social anxiety. That's something a lot of HSPs and INFPs have that. I run this meetup group and I have a lot of people that are like socially anxious. That's one thing I don't have social anxiety. What does that feel like? How does that manifest? Is it like crippling?
Yeah,
Is it like crippling? Is it like really affect your life?
it at times it has. Right now I'm in an okay spot with it. Like it's because it's like the primal part of your brain. You can't really think your way out of it. It's like a phobia. Like that fight or flight response kicks in, and there's just nothing you can really do about it right in that moment. So it's like when the fight or flight response kicks in, it's like the witty, the smart, the engaging part of your brain shuts off, and it's just all about like I can come across as like quiet, aloof. People think that you're unfriendly because you're just kind of like freaking out, but kind of like stoic looking, I guess. Or like it'll come out as like really how do I say it, like chaotic speech. Like I'll say things that just don't make sense, or just someone will ask a question that'll catch me off guard and I'll just like spit out something so strange. Or like in front of a group of people, like it'll go as far as like your voice shakes, kind of get like shaky. And
Okay, I can get like that. Okay, I think this all stuff's all on a spectrum, right? So I think I have it like public speaking, I don't like doing. My voice will shake. I know what that's like, where almost, and then what's worse is you become self-conscious of it and it gets worse, right? Now you're like, oh my God, like I'm on some like spiral here.
Absolutely.
I don't like being the center of attention. And I think that's related to it,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Yeah, I like when I got married, by default, everyone's there looking at you. And
Yes.
I hated it. I just like,
Yeah,
I just did what I had to do, but I went into my happy place. But I was like, oh God, let's get this thing moving, because yeah, everyone's looking at you. And then there's like things you have to do. You got to give them the ring. There's like, I'm like, oh, for an HSP, INFP type, that was like our worst night. You know, it's like, oh my God. So I have it. It's like probably just, but I can relate to some of that vibe. Yeah.
Right. And the public speaking part is significant, especially like at this age where you're doing like job interviews and having to give presentations in school. Like sometimes it can be really debilitating in those situations. So, and for weddings for sure. I remember when I was in that long-term relationship and it was looking like it was going to end in marriage, I was like, I'm not looking forward to that. Even if it's just 10 minutes, I was like, I'm going to pass out or do something embarrassing, like fall down.
I know there's a lot of people right now that are agreeing with us. I can think of a few INFPs that I know. Yeah, on their wedding day, they were terrified or like,
Yes.
we don't like big. See, that's the thing about like the ESTJ types. They like that big show. That's why I always thought it would be hard to be an INFP woman with like an ESTJ type guy, because they always want to have people over, do social events. You know, it's like they like attention. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, if you were a partner with that type of person, you're going to have to go along for that ride. Yeah. And it can be pretty frustrating.
Absolutely. I did feel when I was with the ENTJ, like he was very charismatic and people just really liked being around him. And I remember feeling pressured, like that was a peak of my social anxiety, because I was like, I need to be more interesting. I need to be more outgoing and engaging. Like people think I'm so weird. So totally makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. I get it. That's so crazy too, because I feel like we're the most interesting people, like INFPs and, HSPs. Like we can talk for hours, right? But we're not interesting in those settings, because it's almost like who can be the most, ostentatious and loud and I get pretty quiet too, especially really loud people. Really, I just shut down. I just listen. Here's something that used to happen to me all the time at work. We'll have these meetings. There'll be like 10 people in a room and they're talking about some idea. Mm-hmm. And there's always like one or two people that are dominating. Yes. So I just be quiet. They're like super opinionated. They've already figured the answer out. And so I'm just like, well, and then they'll always go like, hey, Steve, do you have anything to share? You seem really quiet. And I'm not quiet, but you guys are dominating the conversation and like destroying. And like, cause in my head, I have a ton of ideas, but they're not making it like safe for
exactly
an introvert to like open up. And
I
so
never understood how people could be that way, like so not self-conscious, just saying whatever comes into their mind. I did not understand that.
Yeah. And we do look weird to those people. Like they think like Steve's so quiet, but it's like, no, you get us in the right environment, you can't shut us up. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, we're social.
Yeah. It's the worst when someone points out that you're being quiet. I don't know why that's so frustrating, but I hate when like that happened when I graduated college and was kind of trying to integrate into the adult world, I guess. And like, I just felt like I didn't know enough about adulthood to really have anything to add to a lot of conversations yet. So I was just kind of listening. I don't know.
Yeah.
Listen to what you're saying.
Right. But since they just cannot. I've heard people say that introverts can imagine what it's like to be an extrovert, but extroverts can't imagine what it's like to be an introvert. They just can't go there. They're like, why are you not talking right now? Like, who doesn't want to have another party? Who doesn't want to go out all the time? Like, they look at us as like, you're antisocial. It's like, I'm not antisocial. I'm an introvert. They don't know. They don't get us.
Sure. I know. I don't know. In big groups, I just don't really feel comfortable like trying to dominate a conversation or have a lot of input. And I had a therapist who was like, not everyone is like built to be an entertainer all the time. Like, it's important to have good listening skills too. And like, are you better like one-on-one than in a big group? Like,
actually, my best dynamic is 3 people. Because unless I know, like with Jennifer, we can talk for like, we've talked for like 6 hours, like 4 hours is average. Like one-on-one, if I feel safe and I feel connected, but if I'm not really sure, like 3 is good because I don't have to carry the load. There's like one other person to like kind of, if someone brings up an idea, I can play off it. But if I don't know them that well, I feel like I got to carry like the load of the conversation. Yeah, and I start saying random stuff like that. What am I talking about? But if I know them really well, I can do one-on-one, or I feel safe. Not even if I know them, but we're like, we have good energy, then I can do one-on-one. But once the group gets too big and then there's like a dominator, that's it. I shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
I want to ask you about, are you dating right now? Because I was going to ask you how are people dating at 23, especially as HSPs? Do you use dating apps? Like and I'm a Generation X. We really didn't use those, and so I'm just curious, like, how do you navigate dating as an INFP these days?
That's a really good question. So in the last 10 years, I've really only been single total like 6 months. So I'm not the expert, and this time being single, it's been all during the quarantine. So I did download Tinder after that breakup, and I was like, I don't want to meet any of these people.
I was gonna say that's the narc. That's the narc mecca right there. Tinder's like the worst for HSPs and INFPs. I have a Tinder account. I opened it up. I got so overwhelmed and overstimulated. I was shut it down. I'm like, okay, there's got to be a better way.
Exactly. I'll use it for I call it like window shopping. Just kind of like, especially right after that breakup, I had this sensation after that breakup of like, I'm never going to find anyone else that I like or am attracted to. So I was just kind of on there to remind myself there's other fish in the sea.
Oh yeah.
Like they're not on here. Or I don't know. I just can't tell from a picture, I guess.
Yeah. I find, just in my experience, Tinder is definitely the worst for our type, like sensitive, empath, deep thinkers. I'm not saying all people on Tinder are shallow, but 90% of them are narky and hookup culture. Well, I'm a demisexual. I don't know if do you know what that is?
I've heard you talk about it a lot on your podcast. That's my first kind of introduction to it.
See, if you're a demisexual, Tinder is probably not going to be for you, because demisexuals, we need to connect like emotionally first.
Yeah, listening to you talk about, I listened to your demisexual podcast, and there are some parts of it that I could identify with. I don't know if that's like my identity or not. I haven't spent enough time with it, but I definitely don't think Tinder is a place for me. So
no, and it's kind of fun though. It's like it is fun to like swipe around.
Sometimes it's fun to chat with people. I've had some good conversations on there, honestly.
That's cool.
I have INFP in my bio, so a lot of times people ask me what that means, and then kind of get into.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That. I've had several people go and take the test and come back and tell me the results. I'm like, okay, well, here's what that means.
So, what do you think you'd be more compatible with? Someone that is HSP, INFP, or do you feel like you want someone that's opposite? That's like if you think about ideal partner.
That's a really good question. Because my long-term relationship was with, I think it was ISTP, and we got along really well, like in a friendship way. I just don't know if there was a lot of like chemistry, because I don't know why. We were just very similar and just had a more friendship type dynamic. But then the ENTJ guy, like, to me that was really exciting because he was so like different from me, I guess. And I liked that I liked the challenge of trying to keep up with his like very social lifestyle. So I don't know. I guess I would like a more extroverted person.
Like, I'm curious, the ENTJ guy, it was ENTJ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a lot in common as far as like what you talked about? Like, was he into psychology, or, you know what I mean? Did you guys have like those kind of talks, or was it more just like stuff you did together that was the attraction?
We had good talks.
Yeah.
When I first met him, it was more of just like, we were just kind of hanging out as friends, like going and getting coffee and chatting, and we could sit there and talk for hours. I don't know. We had a good banter, I guess. Yeah, he was good to talk to. The ISTJ guy, like, we were obviously really young and kind of awkward, so it took a few years for us to open up. But once we did, I still, like, sometimes we'd have a good conversation. Sometimes I wished he would open up more, or think a little more deeply, I guess. So I guess in that sense, the ENTJ was a little more interesting to talk
Yeah, I feel
to.
like the sensors, like the IS, like my ex-wife was an ISTJ, and
Mm-hmm.
it was good too. It was super friendly and amicable. Like I feel like the IST types are pretty nice, but
yeah,
there was still something missing where, yeah, we couldn't connect on a deep level. It was really friendly. Like we're friends to this very day, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
You said she was ISTJ? That's
Yeah.
interesting. He was so nice, like such a nice, kind-hearted person. I just wish the connection was a little deeper, I guess. Was your ex-wife an HSP?
No, not at all. Yeah, but she was introverted but she's very analytical. Yeah, there was a level of like self-awareness that wasn't there that like INFP types have. Like we're always like we're like our own therapist, right? Like we go to the therapist after we run out of our own ideas, but
right.
Just it seems like sensors typically they're, and I'm not being judgy, they just don't seem to be that curious about how they got to be who they are and their own psychology. Where INFPs were like, we love that stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. The ISTJ, he was just so content all the time. Like I would be like, he would just sit there for like a long time and not say anything. I'm like, what are you thinking about? He's like, nothing. Like, are you just saying that or really nothing? He's like, nothing.
Oh my God. That is like, wow. We're always thinking about something, right? INFPs.
Yes. You can't turn it off. And that, like, the reason our relationship didn't work out was because, like, we went to high school in like a literal village of 2,000 people in southeastern Ohio. So, I mean, it's fine and it's nice. It's just not really where I see myself forever. And he was like, oh yeah, I want to move back here right after college and send my kids to our high school. And I was like,
I feel ya. No, INFPs, we're like free birds. Like, get me out of here.
Yeah. It made me feel like claustrophobic when he would say that.
I want to ask you about how you're handling the pandemic. And the reason I brought that up is because this claustrophobic idea, like I was telling Jennifer the other day, I'm like, I'm feeling psychologically claustrophobic because I can't go anywhere. I've lost freedom. And I get it. We have to lock down, but it's actually causing me some psychological discomfort. I feel constrained, and I'm realizing just our personality types, like we hate being constrained. I want to go to the movies. I want to go to coffee shops. Like that's the thing that's slowly like wearing me down is this psychological claustrophobia. I call it. It's like,
for sure.
I'm not free. How are you handling it in Ohio?
So my breakup happened like 2 weeks into it. So the first couple of months were like pretty brutal because I just had to like sit with all that pain. Like there's no distractions whatsoever.
Oh.
And now that's kind of subsided. I got so claustrophobic that I live at home right now with my parents. I live about 10 minutes from my college, but I actually bought an apartment for the first time. I was like, I need to get out of here.
That's
I just
awesome.
need a change of some sort. So I'm moving out of this house in like a week or two. I definitely credit that to coronavirus. Just needing a change. And like sometimes if I get so claustrophobic here, I'll just go to the new apartment, even though it's not done, and I'll just find something to work on just for something to do.
Oh, that's so interesting. One thing that I do is sometimes I go for drives. I'll go for like hour-long drives in my car and listen to podcasts just to like change the scenery,
Same. I've been doing that for a long time, especially when I was at community college. Like I don't know, I felt this same kind of sensation when I was at community college. I don't know why. I just felt really constrained, and I would just drive around all over town when
we just go driving, wasting gas.
Yes.
But it feels good.
Expensive during it does. Yeah. It's a good pastime.
How do your parents look at your high sensitivity? Do they understand? Do you feel like they understand you?
That's a really good question. My dad is definitely an HSP. Like he's not your traditional dad of like, don't talk about your feelings, withdrawn kind of dad. He's very emotional. He likes to talk about feelings. Like my dad is pretty solid in that regard. My mom's a little more, I know she thinks about things, and I know she's been through a lot of stuff, but she keeps it all inside. And she's always kind of looked at me as like, why are you so sensitive? Like when I was a kid, I would like it was very easy to upset me. I would cry about a lot of things. Like I was very cautious. I didn't always want to do the things that she wanted me to do, and I don't think she understood that. So my dad definitely gets me. My mom's a little bit. Since I've like gotten older and a little more secure in these traits, like I feel more comfortable like explaining it to her, and she's like, all right, I can get that.
Yeah, I've literally had to tell some friends. I have a couple like EST type friends. They're like kind of my party friends. They're always want to do. I just got a text earlier today. The guy's like, "Hey man, you want to go float down the river?" I'm like, "No." I mean, it sounds kind of fun, but I'm doing this right now, but I've had to explain to him. I'm like, sometimes I need to just not do stuff, and you don't take it personally. Like I'm an introvert. I had to like explain to him it's not personal. Like, because people will be like, how come you don't want to hang out? Like, and because they can't imagine why you wouldn't want to go rafting.
Yeah.
Whatever. They're like, what? Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely in college, like a lot of people didn't understand why you want to go to this huge party, like this huge block party. And I'm like, that sounds awful. So many people, so much noise.
That's why I did the podcast, because I got to this point in my life. It was like shooting up like a spotlight. It's like the Batman signal. It's like, does anybody else feel this way? Because I feel like I'm crazy. And then a lot of these introverts like yourself are like, oh man, I could totally relate. I'm like, oh cool, we're out there. Yes. Our people are out there.
Absolutely.
It's just hard to meet in real life.
I know. I've thought about starting a blog, but I don't know what I'd write about. But I just feel like it'd be nice to just have a hobby like that I can do at home and kind of meet people more on my own terms, I guess.
All right. How do you have a community of like Twitter people that you hang out with, like other introverts? Like, do you have any community of just like other HSPs that
No, I'm relatively new to this concept. I just heard about it right around the time of my breakup in April. I'm kind of new. Your stuff surrounding your work is pretty much it. Like, I don't, I mean, I know I have a couple really close friends that are INFP, INFJs. So I'll probably start bringing this stuff up to them and see what they think.
Well, we have the forums if you want to go out to the forums and meet people.
That's a good idea. I was looking at your website earlier and I saw that and I was like, this is actually really nice.
Yeah, there's some pretty good topics.
Yeah, so, I like going on Reddit, and I'm more of a lurker, but I love reading about this stuff on Reddit. People on Reddit are so smart.
Yeah, I love Reddit too. Yeah, the INFP subreddit's good.
I also like in the MBTI community, like I'll just go in there and type in like a celebrity name, and they're always like trying to debate each other, like what personality type do you think this celebrity is? I don't know why that's interesting to me.
Yeah. I've heard Johnny Depp's an INFP, but I don't know.
Oh, really? Yeah. I've heard that Paul Simon is. That's my probably like favorite singer. So
I love Paul Simon.
Yeah.
That is so cool. One thing you wrote to me, you talked about how you said you had been thinking a lot about your childhood and your parents and so many things that bothered you growing up, but that make so much sense to you now. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like just looking back on your childhood and you're just like, things make more sense?
Yeah, like I was thinking about, like, just as a kid, I was really like, I was not a kid in like education type stuff. We refer to this trait in children as openness to experience. Like I was just not, like, everything just seemed so threatening to me. I remember like in the summertime, we would spend a lot of time at my aunt and uncle's house out in the country with my cousins my age, and like they had this awesome like tree house, and it like would be any kid's dream. And I remember I hated it because it was like so dirty, and I was like, all I could think about was how dirty it was, and like there were these awesome like ropes to swing on and play on, and all I could think about was like, what if I fall and hurt myself? Like, I don't know, just I remember as a kid I had trouble enjoying things that kids normally enjoy because I could just pick out any possible thread or thing that could go wrong. And also, like, I remember I would get so tired after doing anything because I don't know if it was just like a sensory overload. I would get like tired and kind of cranky a lot as a kid doing anything. I remember like it was just a little bit harder for me than some of my friends to make friends because I was so like cautious around other kids. And I remember when my parents split up when I was 9, I think. And like, I remember I could really pick up on the fact that both of them were going through some stuff. And I remember that really affected me. So just stuff like that.
You know, my daughter, I have a 12-year-old daughter. She's highly sensitive. And that risk aversion that you're talking about, I see it in her too. Sometimes she won't do things, take a risk because she's scared she'll fall or like she'll get hurt or she'll think about the negative outcome. And I'm not sure all I do is try to give her tons of encouragement, but I'm not really sure. Like if you were a parent and you had a highly sensitive child, what would you do to like encourage the child? Is there anything you could have done that you could do? Like if you were to put yourself in the parent role?
That's a really good question. I guess all I can like do is look back on it now based on what I do now and what I wish I would have known. And I guess like the main thing is like, I wish I wouldn't have been so cautious that I missed out on certain things that kids do. So I guess I would just kind of like explain to the kid, like, I get it. I get why, you're kind of feeling this way, but one day you might wish you had tried that.
That's kind of the approach I've taken. It's hard as a parent because you want to push them, but you don't want to push a sensitive kid too hard because then there's like a really tricky balance where some kids, all you got to do is like tell them, I dare you to do this thing, or I don't think you can do it. And they see it as a challenge. Where
That's HSP, a good strategy.
Yeah. Where I remember I used to play Little League and my coaches would yell at me.
Yeah.
And some kids, like if you yell at them, like almost criticize them, they'll see that as a challenge to like, I can do better, coach. When they would criticize me, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. I suck. It would do the opposite. I'd be like, yeah, why should I try? Yeah. I'd be like, that coaching doesn't work with HSPs. Like we need
for sure
empathy and like a different approach. Yeah.
I know the tough love doesn't work. I've tried telling people that.
Yeah.
Some people respond so well to it and they don't understand when it's like, no, it hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have an HSP sports league. Everyone's like, it's so polite. Like, you know what? We all won today. Let's not even keep score.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You tried. That's all.
You tried. Everyone gets a trophy. Yeah, whatever. Well, we're coming up on an hour. Is there anything else you want to share or any thoughts or questions from me?
Like, what made you realize you were HSP and how old were you?
I didn't find out till like 5 years ago. I can't remember how I came across Elaine Aron's book. I can't remember, but it was an audiobook. But I remember I was running and I was listening to it. And she started talking about high sensitivity. And it was like that light bulb went off. I was like, oh, this is me. Yeah, I felt super validated. But I cannot remember to this day how I got turned on to that book. And it's like, it kind of bums me out because I wish I could remember that. But somehow I'd stumbled onto it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like I really love listening to your podcast. Like every episode is just something that I have at some point like thought about or struggled with. So I really appreciate that you've been doing this, and every episode is just really good content.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I try to put something there for everybody in every episode. See, the thing I've learned is I find the stuff that I find interesting as an INFP, like other INFPs and HSPs do too. So it's kind of easy in a weird way. Yeah, my thing is getting the motivation to do it because I can procrastinate too as an INFP.
Definitely.
Oh my gosh. I'll creep out. It'll take me 3 days sometimes to do a podcast. I'll like, today's the day. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to watch YouTube. And then eventually though, I'll do it because I'm so sick of like beating myself up,
Definitely. That makes sense. And your podcasts are like just the right length too. They're not like too long where I lose interest, but they're not so short that it ends before you know it.
Yeah, I agree. I try to keep them like, I feel like that's good because I listen to podcasts too. And there's like those really short podcasts that are like 10 minutes. It's like, oh, it's too short. And then some that are like 4 hours long or 3 hours, you're like, oh my gosh. So I try to keep them like 45 minutes. Sometimes I'll go over, but.
One thing I wanted to say to other HSPs or INFPs or whatever, is something that really has helped me was finding a local yoga studio and going to not like the like hot, intense classes, but like the yin classes, like the restorative classes, those things are so calming. Like going to one of those for an hour will
Oh,
keep me calm for like a week afterwards. Like my whole entire body and brain feels different. It's just so calming to the nervous system. So I
oh,
know
that's good.
HSPs, we got to keep an eye on our nervous systems or it can get a little bit out of hand sometimes. So yin yoga. Another thing that helps me out a lot is listening to ASMR videos on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever got into that.
Okay, I cannot. Okay, let's talk about ASMR for a second because my daughter was into it for a while, and I had that misophonia. So I'm very sensitive to certain sounds. Like, which ones do you like? Because people will do chewing, they'll tap, they'll
Not the
whisper.
chewing. The eating ones are weird.
Yeah, I can't figure out which one people. I like the idea, but every time I listen to it, my misophonia gets all triggered.
I
But
know that happens to people, and I'm sure with some HSPs that'll happen, but I like the tapping ones and
okay,
not, I don't like the whispering ones. I like the ones where they're talking like in a soft, normal voice, not like whispering in my ear, but like telling a story or something. Those are the two main ones that I like to listen to, or like crinkling, or like unzipping and zipping.
oh, cool, interesting.
Yes.
I'll have to check some of those out. No, I've checked it out. It's an
Yeah,
interesting genre, and there's like
it
some of
is.
these ASMR YouTubers are blowing up. They're like so
They
popular.
are. They are. Get a lot of views and subscribers. And there are some really weird ones. And I'm like, you do you if you're into that. But I like the more mainstream
They eat
ones, I
like
guess.
shellfish and stuff, crazy stuff.
Yes. Like
Yeah,
slurping,
yeah.
soaking.
I should do an
Yeah.
ASMR podcast while I'm like
You
eating
should.
Doritos or something.
I mean, it seems like a pretty easy way to make some money.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Eating into a microphone.
I have a final question for you. I like to ask people this. So, what is some advice or wisdom that the current you would tell your younger self? Something that you know now that you would tell
That's a good one.
9-year-old Jenna, or
Um, I guess go easy on yourself. Like don't perceive everything you do as wrong, or like you're not always have to be a work in progress. Not everything about you is something that needs to be fixed. That's one thing.
that's good.
Another thing would be to just like that being anxious and having anxiety is nothing to be ashamed of. Um, the last thing would be don't try to like be like other people, because it just kind of feels unnatural and awkward, and it's not enjoyable for anybody. It's more enjoyable for people around you. Just be yourself. And
Oh yeah, I've been thinking about this. What you just said about being yourself. I feel like that is the key for us. And Carl Jung calls it individuation,
mm-hmm.
but I call it being unapologetically yourself. Yeah, it's like no more
Mm-hmm.
apologies. I'm an introvert.
Yes,
I'm whatever.
yeah,
Like I
yes,
don't, I'm not
for sure,
apologizing anymore. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah,
absolutely. It's
yeah.
something I
That.
strive for every day, definitely.
Yeah, it takes a while, but yeah, because we hate conformity. That's one of our
Yeah.
things. So it's like if
Mm-hmm.
we try to be like other people, yeah, the earlier our types can learn that, the better. That's so cool that you
Yeah.
learned that. It took me until probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
learn. I feel like it's not something you can teach people.
Yeah.
Like we have to figure it out, and that's everyone goes at their own pace.
Well, we're so accommodating, and that's sort of the codependent vibe that we can have. But it's like we want to
Mm-hmm.
please people. We don't want to make waves. We want to make people happy, so we conform. But then there's a part of us that just wants to break out of that and like get out of Ohio, right? Or get
Yes,
out of like I'm out of here. Yeah,
exactly. For sure.
I'm done.
Definitely.
So anyway,
Yes.
well, cool. It was so nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for doing this. This was really fun.
Yeah, and if you do a blog or anything, let me know. I'll give it a shout out for sure.
I
Yeah.
will, for sure. That's so nice. And I'll
Okay.
keep recommending your podcast.
Thank you so much. All right, Jenna. We'll take care.
You too. See ya.
All right. Bye.